Coons, Democrat from the great state of Delaware and a member of the Judiciary Committee, joins us. Nice to see you, sir.
Great to be with you, Greta.
Sir, what do the Democrats want? Let's say in the event that it turns out that President Trump's claim that he was wiretapped by President Obama, is it false, a lie, accidental, mistaken? Perhaps he had another broad definition of wiretap. What do you want?
Well, first, I want to get to the bottom of this. And I think it's great that we've got bipartisan leadership on the Intelligence Committee and the Judiciary Committee. You just ran a very long interview with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who, together with Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, chaired a committee hearing that I was at today. I think it's terrific that we've got the full committee chairman, Chuck Grassley, standing right next to you, side by side, Dianne Feinstein, that these senators are doing what President Trump challenged us to do, trying to get to the bottom of it and trying to get an answer. Well, I think the conclusion we're ultimately going to reach is that there's nothing there. And if that's the case, then I think what we ought to expect is that President Trump says, I'm not going to be doing any 6 a.m. tweets in the future with really outrageous and unfounded claims, if that's the case.
And perhaps a private call to President Obama.
Would be a really nice gesture.
Okay. All right. Will Mondays end this pretty much when Director Comey testifies? Will that be Director Comey's going to say yes, no to a warrant or wiretapping? Will that end it?
Well, that's my hope and expectation. But Chairman Grassley continues to show his toughness. He is holding up the confirmation of the #2 nominee for the Department of Justice until they get a real answer. So I think that'll be forthcoming on Monday.
All right. To health care. Would Obamacare, if left alone, would it collapse? Because that's what the GOP says, that Obamacare is such a mess. Left alone, collapse?
Well, the Congressional Budget Office study that says that the Republican plan would throw 14 million people off of health care immediately,
but if they did nothing
also
to Obamacare,
says that it is not in a death spiral. Now, it has obvious and significant flaws. And I am a Democrat who is willing, eager to work with Republicans to fix and repair the Affordable Care Act. And I really appreciated the sentiments expressed by Senator Graham in the segment you just ran, where he said, frankly, if Republicans can't get the repeal and replace bill done on their own, they ought to take a big step back and try and work with us in a bipartisan way to save the best parts of the Affordable Care Act and to improve those parts that aren't working.
All right, and counting the numbers, the Republicans are in trouble over here in the U.S. Senate because you've got Senators Cotton, Lee, and Rand Paul saying no. If those three vote no, it's dead in the water, as Senator Graham has said here. Do you know of any Democrats who might vote for the bill, and it might sort of help the Republicans out because they've got that problem with those three?
Not that I know of.
So we can just forget all the Democratic votes on this,
I think that's pretty unlikely on the current House plan for repeal.
Have you heard at all from the White House or anyone from the GOP about this bill? They come to you and say, look, Senator, this is why you should consider it.
No.
So it's just like there's a wall between you.
Well, I had constructive conversations. In the last Congress, I introduced several bills that were aimed at fixing some of the pieces of the Affordable Care Act in terms of reporting burden, in terms of its affordability for small businesses. And I was looking for Republican co-sponsors for those bills. Some of the folks I talked to in the last Congress have talked to me about trying to carry those ideas forward this Congress. But right now, all that's happening in terms of the White House and leadership is they're simply trying to move this repeal and replace bill.
How are costs in your state of Delaware? Are people having access? I mean, tell me where Obamacare is in your state.
Well, we're a very small state, and we're very highly concentrated. There's only a few insurance providers, and there's one very large medical care provider. So we've seen increases in premiums, but we've also seen a dramatic increase in access to quality and affordable health insurance. I recently hosted a roundtable at Christiana Care at one of the big hospitals in my state, and we had several Delawareans, Carrie Orr in particular, came and spoke about how the Affordable Care Act literally saved her life, and we had several others come and talk about how the costs had gone up more than they'd expected. I think we need to keep the best parts, the preventive care, the consumer protections, the investment in making health care accessible, but also deal with some of the cost concerns.
If you could do one thing to Obamacare, what would that one thing be? If all you get is one thing to fix it.
Get bipartisan support for sustaining it going forward.
Well, that you need a magic wand for. I mean something practical. No, is there any particular thing that
One of the things I focused on last year was that for small business owners, at least in my state, their rates went up too much for them to be able to afford to continue to provide health insurance for their employees. I'd like to see a larger tax credit for small business owners to make it easier for them to afford the provision of insurance.
What about Senator Lindsey Graham's suggestion to let it collapse so that everyone's forced to the table, Republicans and Democrats? cuts? Because that hurts the American people.
That's a pretty painful way for us to get to the table. I think we ought to be able to look at it and say, it's not perfect, it's not working for the long term as it is. Let's pull together and find a way to mend it rather than ending it.
I think we should lock all of you in a room for a weekend so you have to talk, Republicans and Democrats. Anyway, Senator, thank you very much for joining us. Here on Capitol Hill.